Around the late 1960s, after the shock that the first two books of Swiss hotelier Erich von Däniken, Return to the Stars and Memories of the Future, caused among visionaries in the scientific world, there were more and more supporters of the theory that our planet had hosted unknown guests from space in the distant past, what was previously unthinkable. Now some openly and publicly advocate for theories that are not in accordance with classical historical facts. In today's clip, we focus on a very strange event, or we can call it an incident, from 1971 during the Apollo 15 mission. Subtitle editor: Semkin proofreader A. Igorova direct transmission of the spacecraft's flight and the astronauts' conversations with the base in Houston has also been enabled. The transmission was also taken over by the French radio and television. That day, somewhere around 8 o'clock in the morning, most of the French were sitting by their radio and TV sets, closely following the exciting live broadcast of the American spacecraft Apollo 15, which was gently and safely descending onto the monotonous lunar surface. The conversation was initially quite uninteresting and boiled down to exchanging technical data. Apollo 15, everything is functioning well. The descent is proceeding as planned. Control, pay attention to the instruments. The message from the flight control expert in Houston was interrupted at that moment. A heavy silence fell. Then some unusual noises were heard. And then the announcement from astronaut Worden reached the listeners of French radio television. Apollo 15 in a few moments. But what is happening? What kind of disturbances are those? Yes, it was indeed about unusual disturbances that occurred in the communication between the Apollo 15 spacecraft and the base in Houston. What was most confusing was the fact that the disturbances did not occur on the devices on the ship, nor in the American air traffic control. All instruments were functioning and no malfunctions were registered on them. So where did the disturbances come from? Who or what caused them? The answer to these questions, which soon arrived from mysterious cosmic expanses or from somewhere else, further confused the crew of Apollo 15, the experts in Houston, and the listeners of French radio television. Just a few moments of oppressive silence lasted. Then unusual squeaky noises emerged, similar to the sounds we hear when tuning a radio station. And then they fell silent too, and a drawn-out male voice was heard. Lama Rabia Lardi Dini and Endeavor Essa Kunas Alam, a specialist in astronautics from French radio and television, asked the translators from English what the spoken sentence means. The translator shrugged in confusion and replied, "I don't understand a single word." "How? I don't understand that language. Besides, let's return the tape recorder." And they returned the tape. Once again, a mysterious, drawn-out male voice was heard. "What does it say?" the astronautics specialist asked again. "I don't know. I really don't understand a single word." At that moment, the connection between Apollo 15 and Mission Control in Houston was reestablished. The first to speak was astronaut Worden. "Apollo 15, repeat once more. I didn't understand anything you said." "Control, good. Let's continue with the program." A few moments later, the NASA base in Houston cut off French radio and television from the live broadcast of Apollo 15's landing on the moon. "What just happened?" the commentator asked the technical service. "We are disconnected from the live broadcast. The response has arrived. Please try to reconnect." However, everything was in vain. The French radio and television service was no longer able to establish a connection with Houston and the Apollo 15 spacecraft that day. Why viewers and listeners of French radio television are not used to such things? Confused by the mysterious sentence that the translator failed to translate, they began to call the studio by phone to get more detailed information. However, it turned out that all the phones were turned off. This further ignited the curiosity of the French. Dozens of journalists rushed to the studio of the French radio and television seeking an explanation for the interruption of the live broadcast. The interruption occurred due to some malfunction in the connections between Houston and Paris. Technicians who were responsible for the implementation of the program responded, "Our people are making efforts to re-establish contact." Probably the biggest surprise for those who ordered the conspiracy of silence happened the next day. Persian journalist and publisher Alain Aji published in his newspaper Major a text titled "A Mission of Unknown Origin," where he writes the following: "Why has no one commented on the mysterious message spoken on the moon? This may be proof that there are other intelligent beings in the universe. What did NASA want to hide? Is there a possibility to translate this sentence?" Many linguists around the world have tried to trace the mysterious sentence that everyone could hear. Let's break it down into words. The voice from the moon first pronounced the word llama. What does it mean? The contractual languages of our planet are hardly mentioned at all. However, language historians claim that in the Gospel of Matthew it is recorded that Jesus Christ uttered this very word on the cross as part of the sentence Eli, Eli, lama azavtani, which translates to my God, why have you forsaken me? Other linguists believe that the word lama can only be translated as angry, furious, strict, which is actually what the word lama means in ancient Hebrew. The word rabbi has its place in the Old Hebrew language and means Lord, teacher, master. The first two words are most often translated as angry master or strict teacher. Searching for the meaning of other words, French researchers managed to translate the word dini as the law of knowledge, and the word endeavor gave the meaning of work or force. However, the other words, in their opinion, cannot be translated and have no similarities in any of the languages known to us. But over the following years, a translation appeared that does not completely match the first version. Here is how it sounds: "What are you doing, sinners? Heaven is for the righteous." Or, "Where are you going, sinners? The stars are for the pure." Of course, in this entire event, the far most important riddle remains who uttered these words. Many have asked over the years whether the message was longer. The problem is that Houston interrupted the broadcast, leaving the world public deprived of information. What actually happened? Is there a possibility that it is an extraterrestrial message or not? Where did the message come from? A century later, we remain in doubt as to whether this event actually took place. Why? Because the audio recording is not available to the public, and over the decades, stories like this are lumped together with numerous conspiracy theories. That must be their goal. Only in this way can they manipulate people, and after a certain period, say that it didn't happen. But it did. We are convinced that in a few decades this story will become a complete myth, like many other events that have marked our recent history. Do you agree? What do you think about this event? Suggest to us in the comments. And if you liked the clip, support us by liking it as well. Thank you for your attention.